Bacteria, tiny living beings. Bacteria are extremely small living things that are too tiny to see with our eyes. They're like the tiniest living units on Earth. Despite being so small, they're everywhere around us, in the air, on surfaces, and even inside our bodies. They're so tiny that you would need a special microscope to see them. Structure of bacteria, shapes and parts. Bacteria come in various shapes, like round balls, sticks, and even spirals. Imagine them as little characters with different forms. They have different parts, too. Cell wall, it's like the outer skin that covers and protects the bacteria. Cell membrane, inside the cell wall, there's a barrier that lets good stuff in and keeps bad stuff out. Cytoplasm, think of this like the inside of a bubble, where all the important things happen. DNA, this is the recipe book that tells bacteria how to grow, live, and do their jobs. Types of bacteria, diverse groups. Bacteria are grouped into different types based on their shapes, behaviors, and how they affect us. Here are some main types. Coccibacteria, round and compact. Cocci, pronounced koki, bacteria are like the little round characters of the bacterial world. Imagine them as tiny balls that can be found hanging out by themselves or in groups. These bacteria have a circular shape and don't stretch out like sticks or spirals. They're like the small circles you might draw, but much, much tinier. Different types and where they live. Coccibacteria come in different types, like a family with various members. Some of these types are friendly and don't cause any problems. They can be found living on our skin, inside our mouths, and even in our noses without making us sick. However, some coccibacteria can be a bit mischievous. They might cause things like strep throat or skin infections. These bacteria are like tiny troublemakers that need to be taken care of so they don't make us feel unwell. How they move and multiply. Unlike some other bacteria that can wiggle around using a tail-like structure called a flagellum, coccibacteria usually don't move much. They prefer to stay in one place, like characters in a story who don't venture too far from their spot. When it comes to making more of themselves, coccibacteria do something called binary fission. It's like a magic trick where one bacteria becomes two. They divide in half, and each half becomes a new bacteria. This happens pretty quickly, which is why bacteria can multiply and spread so rapidly. Importance in science and health. Coccibacteria have caught the attention of scientists and doctors because of their ability to cause illnesses. Understanding them helps experts figure out how to treat infections and keep us healthy. Remember, while some coccibacteria might cause problems, others are perfectly fine and just hang around without causing any harm. It's like having a mix of friendly and mischievous characters in the bacterial neighborhood. Bacilli bacteria, the stick-shaped crew. Imagine bacilli, pronounced bacilli, bacteria as a group of tiny stick-like characters. These bacteria are shaped like really small rods or sticks. They're not round like balls or curvy like spirals. Instead, they look more like straight lines or pieces of tiny pasta. Different types and where they hang out. Bacilli bacteria are part of a diverse family of bacteria with various members. Some of these bacteria are quite helpful and friendly. They can live in our guts and help us digest our food. They're like little helpers in our body's food factory. However, not all bacilli bacteria are nice. Some can cause problems, like food poisoning. These bacteria might be found in contaminated food or water, and if we consume them, they can make us feel sick. Getting around and multiplying. Unlike some bacteria that don't move much, some bacilli bacteria can move around using a whip-like tail called a flagellum. It's like they have a little propeller to help them explore their surroundings. When it's time to make more bacilli bacteria, they do something called binary fission. It's like a magic trick where one bacteria becomes two. They split in half, and each half becomes a new bacteria. This quick multiplication is one reason why bacteria can grow so fast. Importance in science and health. Scientists and doctors pay a lot of attention to bacilli bacteria because they can both help and harm us. Understanding these bacteria helps experts figure out how to use them for good, like in making food or medicines, and how to prevent them from causing illnesses. So remember, bacilli bacteria are like the stick-shaped characters in the bacterial world. Some are nice and lend a helping hand, while others can be a bit naughty and cause trouble if we're not careful. Spirilla bacteria, the curved explorers. Imagine Spirilla bacteria as the adventurers of the bacterial world. They have a unique shape, like little coils or corkscrews. Picture a spring that's been stretched out a bit, and you'll get an idea of how Spirilla bacteria look. Distinctive shape and movement. Spirilla bacteria stand out because of their spiral-like form. They can twist and turn, making them look like tiny swimming corkscrews. Some have long spirals, while others might have shorter ones. This special shape allows them to move around in their environments. Different roles in nature. Spirilla bacteria have diverse roles in nature. Some are good at breaking down things in the environment, like tiny recyclers. They help with processes like composting, where things like leaves and food scraps turn into nutrient-rich soil. In addition to their environmental jobs, some Spirilla bacteria can also be harmful. They might cause infections in plants, animals, or even humans. But remember, not all Spirilla are troublemakers, some just go about their business quietly. Getting around and reproduction. Unlike some bacteria that don't move much, Spirilla bacteria are more mobile. They have a whip-like tail called a flagellum that helps them swim around. It's like they have a little motor to propel them forward. When it's time to make more Spirilla bacteria, they use a process called binary fission. This means they split in half, and each half becomes a new bacteria. It's like one cell turning into two, which helps them multiply quickly. Finding Spirilla bacteria. Spirilla bacteria can be found in various places, like water, soil, and even in the bodies of animals. They're like tiny adventurers exploring different environments and playing different roles. So, think of Spirilla bacteria as the curious explorers with their distinctive twisty shape. They can be helpful in breaking things down, but some might also cause trouble. These bacteria show us how diverse and interesting the world of microbes can be. Gram-positive and gram-negative, gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria, what's the difference? When we talk about bacteria, scientists have a special way of classifying them based on a staining technique called the gram stain. It's like giving bacteria different colors to help us understand them better. This stain helps us see differences in their cell walls, the protective layers around bacteria. Gram-positive bacteria, the thick-walled crew. Imagine gram-positive bacteria as having thick, tough walls like a sturdy fortress. These walls take up the stain and appear purple when looked at under a microscope. These bacteria often hang out in clusters and can come in various shapes, like round or rod-like. Gram-negative bacteria, the thin-walled team. Now think of gram-negative bacteria as having thinner walls, like a more delicate shield. These walls don't soak up the stain as much, so they appear pink when observed. These bacteria often come in more complex shapes, like rods or spirals. Why the difference matters? The distinction between gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria is important because it affects how they react to treatments and medicines. For example, antibiotics. Some antibiotics work better on gram-positive bacteria because they can easily penetrate the thicker walls. Others are more effective against gram-negative bacteria because they can get through the thinner walls. Infections. The type of bacteria also affects how our bodies respond to infections. Some gram-positive bacteria can cause illnesses like strep throat, while certain gram-negative bacteria can lead to infections like urinary tract infections. Medical decisions. Doctors use this classification to help decide which antibiotics to prescribe and how to treat bacterial infections. Remember, the difference between gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria is all about their cell walls. One has thicker walls that soak up stain, and the other has thinner walls that don't hold on to the stain as much. This simple staining technique has a big impact on how we understand and treat bacterial infections. Anaerobes and aerobes, how bacteria breathe. Just like we need air to breathe, bacteria have their own ways of getting the oxygen they need to live. Anaerobes and aerobes are two groups of bacteria that handle oxygen in different ways. Anaerobes, oxygen avoiders. Imagine anaerobes as bacteria that don't like oxygen very much. They're like little creatures that prefer to live in places where there's very little or no oxygen at all. It's like they're more comfortable in areas without fresh air. Anaerobes can survive and grow in places like deep underground or inside our digestive system. Aerobes, oxygen lovers. On the other hand, think of aerobes as bacteria that love oxygen. They're like tiny oxygen fans that need it to survive. These bacteria are found in environments where there's plenty of air, like in the water and in the air itself. How they use oxygen. Aerobes use oxygen for a process called aerobic respiration. It's like their way of getting energy from food, similar to how we get energy from eating. This process helps them grow and carry out their tasks. Anaerobes, on the other hand, have different ways of getting energy, often without using oxygen. Some anaerobes can use other molecules instead of oxygen to get energy. It's like they have their own special power source that doesn't involve breathing in air. Importance in different environments. Both anaerobes and aerobes play important roles in different places. Anaerobes are often found in places where oxygen might be limited, like in the mud at the bottom of lakes. Aerobes are more common in environments where oxygen is abundant, like the air we breathe and the oceans. Remember, anaerobes and aerobes are like two different types of oxygen users in the bacterial world. One prefers to live without much oxygen, while the other thrives in environments rich in oxygen. They each have their own strategies for surviving and growing, just like creatures adapting to their surroundings. Bacteria's impact, good and bad. Bacteria play big roles in our lives. Some are friendly helpers, like the ones that help us digest food and make vitamins in our gut. Others are used to make yummy things like cheese and yogurt. However, some bacteria can make us sick by entering our bodies and multiplying, causing infections and illnesses. Remember, even though bacteria are super tiny and sometimes can cause problems, they're a vital part of our world. They're like the invisible workers that keep nature and even our own bodies running smoothly.